So next we have our friend Costa. So those of you who were with us last year or the year before, Costa's been with us in the last couple of years from IBM. He is going to talk about AI, which is a very hot button these days. And we will hand it over to our good friend Costa. Welcome, Costa, and the floor is yours, my friend.
Thanks, John, and thanks to John and Dan for putting this on again this year. It's an awesome event and a privilege for us to be a part of it. So for those of you that know me, I normally talk about storage, but today I'm talking about AI and cybersecurity. And if you look around at what are the two hottest topics, not only in IT but in society these days, it's basically artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, right? Both are really hot topics. In fact, even your non-technical friends that have heard of these, maybe asking you questions about it. So what are we going to talk about today? So I'm going to talk to you about, from a cybersecurity standpoint, what can AI do to you and what can AI do for you? So we're going to take a look at that. We're going to start with some of the downsides of AI, and then we're going to conclude with some of the positive things. So on the downside, what can AI do to us from a cybersecurity standpoint, right? Turns out AI in the hands of the bad guys can actually do a lot of bad, right? So let's start with phishing emails, right? Typical way for a bad guy to get in. A lot of times we're able to spot these phishing attacks because the English language of the person writing the email isn't exactly that great. It's probably not their first language. However, you can now go into a chatbot and use it to generate a very natural sounding language. And you might say, well, Costa, there's protections in these chatbots that prevent you from, saying, hey, write me a ransomware or a phishing email. But there's also ways of re-engineering your prompt so that you can get past this. Right? So this is one area where actually phishing attacks are going to get better over time. And the ways that we've been able to detect them in the past aren't going to be so effective anymore. Right? So what's another thing? On the positive side, we know chatbots and things like that are able to write code for us. So if I want to, I can have it write code really quickly and effectively, but that also means that code, or we can have it write malware for us. It also means that we could insert malware into that code. It also means that we could insert backdoors into that code. So we really got to be careful and verify when we ask it to write code for us that, in fact, the code is pure and we don't just blindly trust it and it's going to do what we intend it to do. Right? The third thing that it can do to us is misinformation. Right? So how does this happen? These generative AIs, one of the things they suffer from is an issue that's called hallucination. And hallucination is essentially where it'll make up information or correlate two things that don't normally relate to each other and give a false impression. So we could have a really determined attacker who's doing what's called, a prompt injection, where they insert bad information into the system, or, attacker can be attacking the corpus, right? So the body of work of that AI system that it's based on. And if they're able to do that, what comes out would be the wrong information. Right? So we got to be careful to guard against that over-reliance, make sure that we're not just trusting, but we're verifying and testing our sources so that we're sure that they're trustworthy. One other example I'll give you guys, and there's a bunch of them, but the idea of a deep fake. Right? So a deep fake is basically where we have an AI system that is able to copy your image, your likeness, your mannerisms, your voice, your appearance, all the things that point to where someone is looking at a video of you and they can't tell if it's really you or a deep fake, right? Am I real? Am I a deep fake? Is this a recording? Right? If you guys haven't seen the Morgan Freeman and Keanu Reeves deepfakes out there, go look them up. They're freaky. Just saying. Right? So, but if we're going to trust this kind of system, we need to verify things. Right? So right now, the deepfake technology, unfortunately, has gone so far ahead in a very short period of time that it's going to be hard for us to verify those types of things. Right? So I don't want to scare us into thinking, you know, all the bad things that AI can do to us. Let's talk about some of the positives here. Right? So what can AI do for us in the cybersecurity space? And this too ends up being a lot of different things. Every year at IBM, we conduct a survey that's called the cost of a data breach. You may have seen this survey. It's public knowledge. You can go out and download it. And it actually has results for different industries and things like that. But one of the things that came back, or two of the things that came back this year, indicated the number one thing you can do to save on the cost of a data breach essentially is implement AI and automation. Right? So here's some of the benefits. You see them on your screen here. On the one hand, you can save roughly $1.76 million US on a data breach. By the way, the average cost of a data breach in US dollars this year was $4.5 million. So that's a significant savings. But leveraging AI and automation can also allow you to cut down the time it takes to identify and contain a breach by up to 108 days. You're going to say, Costa, hold on, you can cut the amount of time by 108 days? How long does it normally take? Anyways, and it's upward of 200 days, which is crazy, right? So we know that this, you know, AI and automation can be effective, but let's get into a bit more detail on exactly what we're doing, right? So when we look at this space, a lot of what we can do better at is analyze data, so analysis. We're going to analyze large data sets. There's a lot of information that we have to get out there. It's kind of hard to find patterns if I give you a giant data set out there. But if I can use this technology called machine learning, I could do a better job of spotting outliers and anomalies, which is kind of what we do a lot of in the security space. So if we're looking at kind of this field of artificial intelligence, machine learning is a kind of a subset, right? So artificial intelligence being the whole piece, machine learning is a subset of that. And it's kind of that subset which specifically deals with these kinds of analyses that we're talking about. So machine learning is often used in the security space. We do it a lot because it's very good at spotting things like anomalies and outliers, patterns. So today we're doing a lot of this and we're pretty good at it in terms of this subfield of AI. But what about other things? So automation, right? That was the second piece that can help in the cost of a data breach. So AI can help us in the automation task, and I'll give you a couple examples here. Some of the things we need to do is we need to anticipate what to do next in the event of some type of breach. And some of those things start coming in from the areas of, you know, you may have heard something called deep learning, which again is another subfield now of machine learning. And this is a new area that people are talking about, but we can take it one step further to the next kind of area or subfield called foundation models. That's the official term. We usually hear about it in the news as large language models or generative AI. That's again, yet a subset of deep learning. And everything we're going to talk about now kind of sits in that foundational model space. So, you know, security typically sat in the machine learning space. Now we're getting deeper. We're getting into deep learning. We're getting into foundation models. So what are some of the other things we can do? So summarization is yet another one. So, you know, these foundation models are great at gathering a bunch of information, but no one's got the time to sit there and read through all of them, right? So, you know, we can feed it a lot of information and then use summarization to give you a quick summary. Right. So think of, you know, back in the days when we were in college or university or even high school, you know, instead of reading the book, you just read the Coles notes. That's what we're doing here. So summarization, getting the Coles notes version to be able to get information quicker and make better analysis. So one of the other things that AI is good for us are things like interaction. Right, so you can use these chatbots to interact. You can respond to them in natural language. You don't have to format your queries using a particular query language or syntax. You can just use natural language that you're used to. So for me, I would state in English, you know, what could be affected by this particular kind of malware that I see out there, and it would build a query for me that would essentially say, I can run this in my environment. It'll come back and it'll say whether or not I'm actually infected or not, right? And then if it comes back and says yes or no, and then I can ask it follow-on questions like, hey, tell me more about this kind of malware. What kind of indicators or compromises are out there with this kind of malware? And all this stuff gives me, an intuitive way to get information that is, highly technical, but get that data out a lot faster with this interaction. So kind of cool stuff. But that's not all. So another thing we might want to do with generative AI is generate playbooks, right? Generative AI, generate playbooks. Playbooks, if you don't know, are the things that we use in incident response, right? So when we're trying to figure out what to do next, once we've had an incident, refer back to the playbook. So if we could generate these playbooks on the fly based on what has already happened, you could see where there would be some kind of crossover and how this can really help our environment. So this is really a good use case of this type of technology. Right? So in the future, expect to see kind of more of this. And there's going to be other types of things where we can use generative, kind of creative type technologies. Another one we can bring up here, and this is kind of the last one I think I'll be mentioning today, is threat hunting. So a threat hunter is basically, a bad guy or someone posing as a bad guy trying to come up with a hypothesis that says, I wonder if someone were to attack us, how do we think they would do it? So they would probably do one of a couple of things. So internally, we kind of have a limitation in terms of our imagination. Sometimes the bad guys can dream up scenarios that we had never even thought of. So maybe it would be useful if we could use some type of generative AI or AI technologies to come up with some of these hypothetical use cases and go out and actually automate and do a threat hunt in our own environment to see if we could find something. So the whole reason why we're doing all of this or leveraging AI for cybersecurity for, the pros is essentially taking this and turning our environment from being what was historically a purely reactive model to a proactive model, right? And that's the good news in this story, right? So rather than just how do I react after the fact, how do I become more proactive? So when we've got AI, we've got cybersecurity, and if we're working together, we can do this in a more proactive way. And I mentioned before, if we do the automation in AI, it can actually save a whole ton of money while you're at it. So being more cost effective and being more efficient. So that's it for me, John. I think I saw a couple of chats pop up there. But yeah, the nuclear arms race, this kind of reminds me of, back in the 80s and 90s, the whole radar detector thing, right? So radar detectors came out, and then radar detectors came out from the police forces, and then radar detectors. So it's this constant arms race where everyone's trying to one up each other. The bad guys are getting better, the good guys are getting better, and we just kind of try to stay ahead of the curve here. So again, thanks a lot to John, Dan, and the team for hosting this.